Okay. Good morning.
Morning.
Welcome to Maseches Avodah Zara. It's very difficult Masechta only because whenever you ask everybody, "What are you doing?" Everybody says, "I'm doing Avodah Zara. I'm learning Avodah Zara. I'm getting into Avodah Zara." So it's very tricky for me. That's the only thing that's really tough thing. So I was very careful to say I'm learning Maseches Avodah Zara. I'm doing Maseches Avodah Zara. So more so that I'm doing Sukkos or something like that. So Daf Yomi is sponsor for the week by Rabbi Aaron and Evelyn Kislasi in honor of their upcoming marriage of their daughter Ilana to Joey Brescher of Los Angeles. Mazel tov.
Mazel tov.
And we start at the very beginning. First word on Daf Beis Amud Aleph. Lifnei Eidehem shel Ovdei Kochavim. Before the Eidehem, we're going to discuss what the word means, but it refers to the holidays of non-Jews. Shlosha Yamim for 3 days before. Asur laseis v'laseisi mahem. You can't do business with non-Jews. Ulahash ilon, and also lend things to them. Vilish ol mehen, and borrow things from them. And the idea behind this is that whatever business and interaction we have with them before the holiday, it's going to make their holiday very special. And we're not interested in helping them make their Avodah Zarah holidays special. Ulahal vason, not to loan them, ulavos mehen, or to borrow from them. Lifor on, to pay them back, vilifra mehen, or to ask them to pay us back. So Rabbi Yehuda says, Nifra mehen, you can ask them to pay the money back, because nobody likes paying a loan back, right? So therefore, paying a loan back, that you can ask, right? They're not going to be happy about that. Amrulo, so they said to him, yeah, but even though nobody likes paying a loan back now, the person will be happy afterwards, right? I'm happy that I have no debts anymore. So even if you don't look at it immediately as a positive thing, by the time his holiday comes, he's going to be praising his God that that he doesn't have a loan anymore, that he's out of debt. So therefore, we want to avoid that situation. Says the Gemara, Rav and Shmuel. So Rav and Shmuel have a discussion, an argument about this second word of the Mishnah. Chad tani eidehen v'chad tani eidehen. One of them learns it with an aleph, eidehem, and one of them learns it with an ayin, eidehem. And somebody had pointed out that they didn't have written, even when they wrote the Mishnah down, mostly it was taught orally, right? So therefore, eidehem and eidehem sound very similar, so it would be easy for there to be two parallel texts.
But there must be two different things.
There are two different things, and now we're going to explain why we're going to pick those two words. However, eidehem and eidehem don't sound very much the same. That's the only problem I have with it. If you are familiar with the Taimani pronunciation, and probably a pronunciation that they had back earlier in the times of the Mishnah period, the ayin is a guttural ayin deep in the throat, yeah, and so that's why if you see in the transliterations of into English of Hebrew words, right, ayins become g's, right? So we have Sodom and Amorah becomes Sodom and Gomorrah, right? And so, right, because it's a sound, it's a good, deep throat guttural sound. So therefore, it sounded very much similar to a g sound. That's why you see like right, something with an ayin, Aza becomes Gaza, right? So that's where that comes from. So in any event, nevertheless, I guess one could then point out that maybe by the times of the Mishnah, it wasn't so uncommon for people to have stopped pronouncing it with that guttural ayin sound. So that, because
I think even gutturally, they're still similar enough.
It's still similar enough, right? So that you'd have to be able to say. So mandatani eidehem, the one who uses the aleph, eidehem, lo mishtabe, she's not making a mistake. The word eidehem with an aleph means the word to destroy, to cause a destruction. And umandatani eidehen, the one who says eidehem with an ayin, which means to give a testimony, lo mishtabesh, is not making a mistake either. We're going to either refer to the holidays of the non-Jews as the days of their destruction or the days of their witnessing. Mandatani eidehem lo mishtabesh, where does this eidehem, calling it a destruction? They're not making a mistake. Dichsiv, because the pasuk says, ki korov yom edom. This is referring to, at the end of days, eventually the day of their destruction is coming. And therefore, we're going to use the word Edom to refer to their holidays, because we're going to indicate their destruction is coming about through these holidays. Uman detani eideham lo mishtabish, and the one who says their testimonies is not making a mistake. Dichsiv, because the pasuk says in Yeshaya, Yidnu eidehem v'yitzdaku, they should come and give testimony, and then they'll be declared righteous. Meaning, at the end of days, Hashem is going to ask their their idols to give some kind of testimony in order to prove that they were righteous. These non-Jews were righteous, and then if they come and they testify, then they're righteous. Then they can win at the end of days. But of course, these idols can't testify at the end of days. Okay, so uman de tani edehem, my time lo tani edehen. So the classic question in the Gemara is, what is the reason why one would pick one of these versions versus the other? Either one, if it seems like you learn it from a pasuk, why would you pick one of the other? So if you picked the aleph, why would you not pick the ayin? Amar lach tavra adif. The answer is because the word to destroy is a better way of describing the holiday, right? If you want to be able to say that their holiday is really a holiday, right, that it's a disgrace, so then to say it's a destruction, a day of destruction, is a better descriptor. So he prefers that descriptor. Uman de tani edehem, if you like to use the ayin version, my time a low tani edehem, why doesn't he like the aleph version? Amar lecha man gorim lehu tavra. Edus sheheidu be'atman. What's going to cause their destruction? It's going to be the testimony that they have to give about themselves that they worshipped all of these idols. And so therefore the testimony is really the bigger deal because the testimony leads to the destruction. So that's what we want to highlight. This holiday, this is the reason why they're going to be destroyed at the end of days. Hilkach, therefore, edus adifa, the testimony declaring that the holiday is really a testimony against their character is really the better approach. So that's how we look at it. The only problem is this pasuk that we used in order to prove that edehem with an ayin means their holidays. The pasuk we presumed it was referring to non-Jews, but it isn't. If you look at the context, right, that's quoted on the side, Kol hagoyim nikbetzu yachdav, all of the nations will gather together, veyasvu leumim, and all of the nations will come as groups of nations. They will gather together. Mi bahem yagid zos, right? So who's going to be able to testify about the fact that they kept the Torah? Verishonis yishmi'unu yidnu edehem. The first ones will become and they will be heard. They will give their testimony, v'yitzdaku, and they will be proven correct, v'yishmu v'yomru emes, and everyone will hear and they will say it is truthful. So the presumption is that the pasuk is talking about these non-Jews, the nations that are going to come at the end of the days, and they're going to testify. But that's not really. The pasuk is talking about two different groups. First comes the non-Jews, then afterwards it's Habi Yisrael Ksiv. This pasuk is talking about the Jews who then afterwards come and they give testimony that they did follow the Torah and they win. That's how the pasuk reads. That first the nations gather, and then Hashem says, okay, well, who kept the Torah? And then Bnei Yisrael say, well, we did, and then they bring a testimony, and we'll see the whole story about how it's supposed to come out, and then they win. So therefore, Edehem is not talking about the non-Jews, it's talking about the Jews. Damar Rabbi Yeshua ben Lakish, ben Levi, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Kol mitzvos sheYisrael osin ba'olam hazeh, ba'os u'meidus lahem li'olam haba. Whenever a Jew does a mitzvah in this world, the mitzvah comes and it testifies for him in the world to come, right? You've heard the idea that every action that we do, every mitzvah that we do creates a malach in Shemayim, and so therefore when we get to Shemayim, we've got all these malachim of all the mitzvahs that we create and all the averos that we create likewise have a negative, a detractor against us, and they all come against us and for us and against us at the end of days. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, Yitnu edehem v'yatzdiku, they'll give their testimony, and you will be declared victorious and righteous. So therefore, you do your mitzvos in this world, and that's what this pasuk is talking about. It's talking about Jews who do their mitzvos, and they will come, and in the end of days, their mitzvos will testify for them. Eilu Yisrael, Yishmeu v'yomru emes. Elu Ovdei Kochavim. The next part of the pasuk says they will hear it and they will say, they will have to admit it, and they will say, it's true, you're right, the Jews did the right thing. That's the non-Jews, right? Different parts of the pasuk referring to different things. Ella Amar Rav Huna, so rather that pasuk that says Eideham is not talking about non-Jews. We need a different pasuk to prove that the testimony of non-Jews at the end of days causes their destruction. So Rav Huna says, brother of Yeshua, the son of Rav Yeshua, Man da Amar Eideham, the one who likes the word Eideham with an ayin, mehacha. It comes from this pasuk. This is a pasuk also in Yeshaya, but a little bit later on Parak Mem Daled, Yotzrei Pesel Kulam Tohu, that the ones who create the idols, they are all tohu mixed up. Ve'chamudehem bal yo'ilu, and the things that they are that are beloved to them will not help them. Ve'edehem Hema, and that is the testimony against them, that they have these idols that don't help them. So that testimony, again, Veidehem, that's the testimony we're talking about at the end of days. Isn't go against them.
Isn't tohu empty?
Emptiness, yeah, tohu vavohu, emptiness and mixed up, right? That's that. That will testify against us. That's the on our side. But this is talking about the idols of non-Jews, right? The idols of non-Jews are going to testify against them. Darash Rabbi Chanina bar Papa. Rabbi Chanina bar Papa taught the following teaching. Vitim Reb Simloi, and some say it was Reb Simloi. Laws, here's how the story works. We had this discussion that all the nations, this pasuk that we had in Yeshaya, all nations are going to come together. Here's how it works. La'asid Lavo again means in Olam Haba days. So as we discussed in Sanhedrin, right, we have end of days, which is the days of Mashiach, and then we have the La'asid Lavo, which is the end of days. This sounds like it's referring to the end of days, not the
Messianic era.
Not the Messianic era, right? Messianic era is a regular era with which we have a king. According to many opinions, this is La'asid Lavo, the ultimate judgment day. So what's going to happen is, maybe HaKadosh Baruch Hu Sefer Torah, Hashem's going to bring a Sefer Torah, Umanicho B'cheiko, and he's going to hold on to it, and he's going to carry it under his arm. The Omer, and he says, Lamisha Osek Ba Yavo V'Yitos Charo. Anybody who worked in this, he should come and collect his reward. Miyad miskabtsin ubain ovde kochavim ba'arbuvya. All the non-Jews come, rush together, all together as one. They come running in. Now, why do they all come running in? Some potential explanations is that they're hoping that, if you don't look at each of us individually, as a group collectively, we all have some things that are positive. Maybe you'll look at all of us as a collective whole, and that's how we can be judged. Or potentially, it's they're also confident that they're going to win the judgment. They don't really worry so much to be able to have to stand up and give their own testimony in court. Also, the question is if he's holding up the Torah and he says, "Who kept this?" Right? Were they under some false impression that they kept the Torah? Could be that they didn't know what he's holding. Right? He's holding a book of laws, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we kept law. We all had laws, so we did the right things too." Shenamar, as the pasuk says, "Kol goyim nikbetzu yachdav." All of the non-Jews are going to gather together. Amar le'ma Kadosh Baruch Hu. So Hashem says to them, "Al tikansu lefanai be'arbuvya." Don't all come in all mixed up. This is going to be a merit-based case. I need every nation to be able to come and bring their claim. Now, this is Hashem is saying this, as we're going to see that Hashem is not trying to pull any fast ones on anybody. He wants to give every nation the best chance that they have of giving their best claim. So he recommends to the nations, everybody gets separated out, so that your nation can provide the right claim without getting mixed up with everybody else. Okay, so he's doing this for their benefit. Every nation's got to come on their own, separately. Amud Beis. V'sofreha, with their scholars. Shenamar, as the pasuk says, Vayasvu le'umim, all of the nations will gather together. Vein la'om elamachos, the word om means a kingdom. Shenamar, as the pasuk says, Ula'om mi la'om yamatz. When Rivka is trying to figure out why she has so much difficulty during her pregnancy, she goes and she seeks advice, what's going on, and she's told that she has two nations that are battling it out inside of her, right? And one nation is going to rise when the other nation falls. Om mila om yamatz. There are two different kingdoms, two different kingships. Umi ika irbuvya kami HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So he says, well, how's Hashem mixed up? Hashem looks at everybody, every individual. Hashem doesn't get mixed up. When we see billions of people, Hashem sees individuals. He knows every single thing, the thoughts that are on everybody's mind. How could we say that they all came as a mixed up bunch? Hashem didn't see them as a mixed up bunch. He saw a billion individuals. So Ella, arbevu inhu bahadi hadadi. What Hashem suggested is for their benefit, they shouldn't all be mixed up together. Delishmeu mai da'amar lahu, because they should hear what it is that they're being accused of. Right? They all should be able to get together and give their best claim as a nation. Miyad nichnuso lefanav malchus Romi techila. Right? The Romans come in first. Right? They get invited in first. My time, what's the reason why Rome comes in first? Mishum de chashiva. They're the most important and significant of the nations that have existed. Uminolan de chashiva. How do you know they've been the most significant? Dichsiv, because the pasuk says, "Vatocho kol ara v'doshino vatodikena." right? That the nation, right? This is in Daniel, I believe, right? This is in Daniel, that he's discussing that that there was a prophecy, right? The king had made a dream and he had different animals, and the Romans, he says, is the most important of all of them because it consumed the entire world and they trampled it and they crushed it. Right, so this is the Roman nation that conquered everything. Rabbi Yochanan says, "Zu Romi." This nation that it's talking about in that pasuk in Daniel, that's the Romans. So that's the Romi Chayeves. He calls them Romi Chayeves, the wicked Romans, the ones who are called Chayeves, meaning they're obligated for punishment for their crimes. Shetavah yatza bechol ha'olam. Their shetavah. Some explain that shetivah as that they were their culture, right? The way that they acted, their rule went around over everybody. And some explain shetivah as tabas, like their coinage. They became rule over everybody. That's, I guess, how you start to see whether a nation has dominance is what money are you using, right? And you see, I guess the currency, right? So nowadays the U.S. I was thinking that yes, that even if you might say that where are the Romans today, right? We always say that this is the Gullus of Rome, right? The Romans are really created Western civilization as we have it, and if that's the case, then the U.S. dollar is sort of the international currency.
Without the tariffs.
With or without tariffs, but that is that the U.S. dollar is the currency. But the Romans in their time. Also, you find Roman coins all the way up in Great Britain, and you find them all the Roman coins were everywhere. That was the standard trading currency of the time. How do you know that the one that most significant should go first? So Rav Chisda explains why that should be. Rav Chisda says, Melech v'tzibor, when you have a king and you have regular people, Melech nichnas tchila ledin, and you have to judge them, the king goes first into court. Shenemar, as pasuk says, "Lasos mishpat avdo umishpat amo." That there in Malachim it says that we're going to do just judgment against his servant. Meaning, this is what Shlomo is suggesting about himself, that I need to speak to Hashem, so Hashem should judge his servant, meaning himself, and then the nation. First Shlomo gets judged, then the nation. So the king goes first. Right? Mishpat Amo Yisrael. But time of Mai, so why is that? Why does the king go first into judgment? Ibois Emal Lav Orech Ara Lemesav Malka Me Abroi. Some say it wouldn't make sense that the whole nation goes in for judgment. The king sits in the waiting room outside, right? That's disrespectful to the king. Veibois Ema Makmi Delepush Charon Af. So the other is that once Hashem deals with the crimes of the nation, then Hashem's going to be angry. Then you bring the king in, and he's going to be held accountable not only for his own actions, but he was also the king of this nation. He'll be doubly accountable for the nation's crimes and his own, right? Let him come in first, gets judged on his own actions first, then the nation gets judged on their own actions.
It's funny because we see with the Kohen Gadol, it's the opposite. He gets judged. I mean, he brings carbon first, but we say a bad.
Well, no, exactly. Like
we hold him accountable for the whole nation.
But he goes first. He goes first, right? He does go first. He has to bring his korban first. We said that, right? He has to be, right? A zakai has to be able to daven for the zakai, right? So he goes first. He makes his confession first, right? And then after he's forgiven for his averos, then we go to everybody else. So it does work in parallel. What is interesting is that both of these reasons don't seem to apply to Romans versus everybody else, right? In other words, okay, maybe because they're chashiv, it would be inappropriate to leave the Romans outside if they're more impressive and everybody else would go inside. But it seems like the parallel doesn't quite work. The reason why a king would be judged first versus why a particular nation would be judged first doesn't seem to work so much in parallel. I haven't looked that up, but nevertheless, we see the concept that whoever's most important goes first. Okay, and we have we have had that. And the Gemara interestingly doesn't quote like we had in Sanhedrin that you have somebody who's a rabbinic scholar. We take care of them first in a court case. We don't bring that as a rationale because we're dealing with bad people here. We don't want to say that potentially the reason there is because we're giving honor to the Torah and we're giving honor to a righteous person. We're proving that regardless whether the person is honored or not honored, we're going to give the court case to the person, to the nation that is most significant first.
I also said that we won't have a king on the Sanhedrin because he would have to go first and then everybody would have to go.
Yeah, correct. That's true. Yep. So we have had kings that would go first. So Omar lehem HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So Hashem says to the Romans, "B'mai asaktem." What did you guys do? what's your Roman claim to fame? Omrim lefanov. So they say before him, Rabbonu Shalom, Hashem, Master of the universe. Harbei shvakim takninu. We made lots of marketplaces. Harbei merchatzos asinu. We made lots of bathhouses. Harbei kesef izov hirbenu. We made lots of money. Right? We're known with great economic power. That's what we created. V'kulam lo asinu el b'shvili Yisrael. And the whole reason we did it were for the Jews. We did it for the Jews. Kadesh asku b'Torah. We did it so the Jews could learn Torah in Lakewood, and they would be so comfortable, right? Okay, so Amar le Makadosh Baruch Hu. So Hashem says back to them, Shotim Sheba Olam. You are the foolish people of the world. Takantem shvakim loshiv behem zonos. You made marketplaces so that you could get involved in prostitution. Meaning that, and you see this about marketplaces and say, well, that's a little bit explicit, whatever. But the bottom line is that being open in business for all kinds of business ventures provides a great cover for all kinds of averos, inappropriate acts, right? So the cover was there, right? You made markets so that you could just, we're here doing business, and business is inappropriate. Merchatzos la'adein bahen ba'atzmam. Your bathhouses were just for pleasure. Right, you are just basically creating a society of pleasing yourselves. Kesef v'zahav, and as far as the money, shalihu, that's all on me. Right, that you guys get zero credit for the fact that you amassed wealth. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, liya kasef v'liya zahav. Hashem says the silver and the gold, that's all mine. Nu'um Hashem says Hashem tzvakos. So because Hashem, ultimately everybody just goes out on their business ventures. Whether they succeed, you didn't make your hishtadlus, but whether they succeed or not,
whether you make your
that's completely
whether it's dirty money or not.
That's completely up to Hashem to decide whether you're successful or not, right? You make your hishtadlus, and Hashem decides if you make money or not. So Hashem says you guys are taking credit for the fact that your business ventures were successful. No, not true. It's me. I'm the reason why they were successful. Klum yesh b'chem magid zos. So is there anybody who can say that you kept this? Remember, he's holding the Torah. So is anybody did this? Shenemar mi bachem yagidzos, as he says, the pasuk says, who is amongst you that can say that he kept this? Vein zos el Torah, the zos, the this is the Torah. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, zos haTorah asher sam Moshe. This is the Torah that Moshe gave. So the zos means the Torah. Miyad yatzu b'pachin nefesh. So they leave dejected. They lost, so they leave. Yatzos malchus Romi. So the Romans are gone. V'nichnas malchus Paras achareha. The Persians come in next. Okay, so the Persians are on the list. My taima dach shivi basra. Why do they come in next? They're the second most significant nation. Minoan. Where do we know that from? Dichsiv pasuk says va'aru chiva achri. Afterwards came another animal. Tanina damya ledov. It was grand. It was similar to a bear. It looked like a bear. But Tani Rav Yosef, and Rav Yosef explained Elu Parsian. The bear is representative of the Persians. Sha'ochin v'shosin kedov. They eat and drink like bears, right? If you ever seen a Persian eat and drink, I don't know. U'mesur bolin basar kedov. They're very hefty, like a bear. Big, fleshy people like a bear. U'megadlin se'ar kedov. And they're very hairy, like a bear, right? Ve'ein bahem menucha kadov. They don't rest, like a bear, right? Bear gets tied up. They're constantly pacing, wandering back and forth. They're also very antsy, like bears. So therefore, that's apt. If you're going to describe the Persians like an animal, that's the spirit animal. Their spirit animal. They're bears. Okay. Amar le Makadosh Baruch Hu. So Hashem says to them, "B'maya saktim." What'd you guys do? Omrim lefanov. So they said, "Ribono shel olam, Master of the universe. Harbei gisharim gasharnu. We made amazing bridges. Harbei karachim kavashnu. We created lots of cities. Right. Harbei melchamos asinu. We made many wars of defense, right? We protected our kingdom against marauders and around. Right? If you go look through the Persian, they took over all the way through Egypt and every place. They were a very large, expansive empire through wars. Lo asinu el b'shvili Yisrael. The whole reason we did it were for the Jews. Kedeshi is asku b'Torah. We did it so the Jews, they would be able to travel from place to place within one big country without a passport, and they would have all these cities to be able to learn in, be able to see the Gedolei Yisrael. They had plenty of it was easy. Transport was easy. Amar le Makadosh Baruch Hu. So Hashem says, Kol ma she'asisem l'torach atzmechem asisem. Nope, the whole thing was for you. You didn't do it for Jews. Not true. Takantim gesharim litomeham mechas. The reason you made bridges is because you wanted to get tolls. You wanted to collect tolls. So therefore you made highways and bridges so that you could collect toll. Krachim lasos behem Angaria. The reason why you had cities was in order to make in order to be able to press people into service, right? You create more cities, you create more people in service, you'd be able to press them into public service, into army service. So that's why you did that, created more cities, more population in order to have more people serve the empire. Milchamos aniasisi, and as far as the wars, those are mine. Shenemar pasuk sem Hashem ish milchama. Hashem decides when there's war and there's peace, right? Not up to people. Klum yesh bachem magid zos. Is there anybody who can say that you kept this? Shenemar mi bachem yagid zos. Who amongst you can say that they kept this? Vein zos el Torah, and of course zos is the Torah. Shenemar v'zos ha-Torah shesam Moshe. So miyad yatzum lefanav b'pachei nefesh. They go out, they lost, right? Now the Persians saw the Romans go in and make their claim. They literally came in and made almost the exact same claim. So what were they thinking? Delo mahanya didn't work. Velo midi didn't do anything. So my time Aili, why did they get up and say, okay, we're ready to give our court case? So Amri inhu sasri beis hamikdash vanan baninon. The answer is they thought, well, the Romans destroyed the Beis Hamikdash. We built the Beis Hamikdash, right? Cyrus gave permission, right, and to rebuild the Beis Hamikdash, the Persian Empire.
Which was Ashur's son, wasn't it?
Yeah. So therefore, it was thought that would give us a leg up here. V'chein l'kol uma ve'uma. So after the Persians leave, every nation comes one at a time. V'chi me'achar dechazu l'kamoi delomani. Now the question is on all the other nations. They saw the Persians and the Romans; it didn't work. So Velomidi at all. My time idly, why did they think they could come? So Savri Hanach ishtabdu bahu Yisrael, but lo sha'abadnu b'Yisrael. The answer was the Persians and the Romans, they oppressed the Jews, right? But the other nations, they didn't want to say we oppressed. We didn't oppress the Jews quite so much, right? So of course we know the Babylonians did. We know that there were other nations that did, right? Right. The Greeks also did. So the question that Meforshim deal with is why is it that they potentially would go in? So some answer that they didn't go in, right? Potentially is that they skipped the the issue. They had no claim, right? Others proclaim that potentially they had some other kinds of claims, but Maishna Hani de Chashivi, Maishna Hani de Lo Chashivi. So the question is, and this is a question how you read the Gemara. Why is it that in our Gemara we clarify exactly what were the claims of the Persians and the Romans, and we don't go through the claims of all of the other nations, right? That's one potential way of looking at it. Mishum dahanach mashki b'machusayhu ad asi mashicha. The answer is because these, or the other question is, why are these considered important? These nations came first and the other ones, right? But in any event, the answer is because their kingdom is going to last until the days of Mashiach. Right, so therefore, there's during this exile, there's still a Persian kingdom. There's still a kingdom of the Romans, and so therefore those last all the way till Mashiach. That's why it's appropriate for us to mention and explain what their claims were. Omrim lefanav Ribono Sholem klub nasata lanu v'lo kilbonu. So now the nation protest. What's your attack against us, Hashem? We didn't keep the Torah. Okay, we never said we would. It's not like we broke a deal and didn't keep the Torah. We never accepted the Torah. We never kept the Torah. So what's the problem? But how could they say they were never offered the Torah and they didn't accept it? Doesn't the pasuk say, "Vayomer Hashem misinai bo v'zarch meseir lamo," and the pasuk continues, "V'hofia mehar paran," right? That Hashem comes from Sinai and He shines forth from Seir, which is a land in the southern area of south of Eretz Yisrael, which is, I guess, where the sort of like the Beersheba area is now. But that was where Har Seir is, where Esav is from, and Paran is the area where Yishmael and the Persians are from. Uksev, the pasuk says, Elohami Temon Yavo, Hashem that comes from the south, from these lands, from Paran and from Seir. Umay boi beSeir, umay boi beParan. Why is Hashem spending so much time over there in Seir? And why is He spending time in Paran? What's the reason why? Before He comes to Har Sinai, He takes a detour, He takes a touring trip, and He goes and visits Esav and Yishmael. Why? Amar Rabbi Yochanan says, "Melamed shechzira HaKadosh Baruch Hu hakol uma veloshon velo kibluha." This tells us that what Hashem did is He went to every nation and He said to them, "Do you want the Torah?" and they didn't accept it, right? That's like with the kids song, right? Hashem says, do you want the Torah? And they say, no, right? Exactly, right? Then none of them want it, right? This is where that comes from, right? They asked, Hashem goes to every nation and he offered it to them. So they can't claim that you never offered it to us and we didn't, therefore we're not punished. Until they got to the Jewish people and they accepted it. So therefore, what kind of claim would they have?
I think we accepted it by force, didn't we?
Oh, good question. Elohachi Amri, this is their claim. Klum kibal nuha velo kaim nuha tav ros hon. One second. It's Yisrael v'kablua. Elohachi Amri, klum kibal nuha. Sorry, this is what said. This is it. Klum kibal nuha velo kiyam nuha. So before we get to Yehuda's question, one more line here, right? We never accepted it. And therefore, we never kept it. In other words, first you were upset at us because we never accepted it. Well, you never offered it to us. So now we prove that Hashem did offer it to them. So, okay, fine, you offered it to us, but we never accepted it. So how can you hold us accountable if we said, no, thank you? So, va'alda tavras hon. So, amai lo kil bisua. That's what the destruction is based on. Hashem saying to them, why didn't you accept it? Right? That's the mistake that you made. You could have accepted it. You didn't. Elakach omrim lefanov. Rather, this is what they say to Hashem: Ribono Sha'olam, Master of the Universe. Klum kafis aleinu har kagigas. You never took a mountain and put it over us and forced us to accept it, like Yehuda says. Right? You never forced us. If you had forced us, right? Velo kibal nua. Right? We didn't accept it because you never forced us to accept it. Kimo shasis til Yisrael. You did that to the Jews. They wouldn't have accepted it either. But they were forced. Tichsev, as the pasuk says, "Vayisyatzvu b'tachtis ahar." They camped underneath the mountain. The Amar Rav Dimi Bar Chama explains, "Melame chikafa Hakadosh Baruch Hu har kegigis Yisrael." That Hashem picked up the mountain and He held it over the Jewish people. The Amar Lahem, and He said to them, "Imatem mekabel mesatorah mutav." If you're going to accept the Torah, that's great. V'im lav, but if not, sham tehei kivuraschem. Then this is going to be where you're buried. So miyad omer lahem Hakadosh Baruch Hu. So that's the claim, right? You could have forced us. You didn't. So that's a good claim. So omer lahem Hakadosh Baruch Hu. So Hashem says, Harishonus yashmionu. Did you listen to the first mitzvos? Remember you had the Sheva mitzvos b'nei Noach? Remember those? You didn't keep those either. So therefore, why would I have forced you to take upon yourselves more mitzvos? You couldn't even keep those. Shenamar, as the pasuk says, V'rishonus yashmienu, the first ones you didn't keep. Sheva mitzvos shekibaltem heichan kiyamtem. Right? Let's take a look at the Sheva mitzvos b'nei Noach. Where did you keep those? How do you know? Where's the source in the Torah that says that they didn't keep them? How do we know they didn't keep them? Detani Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef explains, Amad vayimoded aretz ra'a vayeser goyim. Right? He stood up and he measured the land. He saw vayeser goyim. Yeser means he dispersed. Okay, so he measures and then he disperses the non-Jews there. So the question is, my ra'ah, what did Hashem see that He caused him to disperse and to tell them you've lost the case? Ra'ah zayin mitzvos shekibu aleihem b'nei Noach v'lo kaimum. He saw the 7 mitzvos that were given to them and they never kept it. Kevan shelo kaimum. So since they didn't keep it, amad vehitiran lahen. So he got up and he released them. He said, "Okay, you don't have to keep the 7 mitzvahs b'nei Noach anymore. I'm not going to punish you."
I have such an issue with this answer.
What?
There was periods of time the Jews didn't keep the Torah.
The Jews?
Yeah.
This is non-Jews.
No, I know, but he's saying he has a taina against them. You didn't keep the Sheva mitzvahs.
Yeah.
There's also times and periods where the Jews didn't keep the
at all.
Yeah, before the Second Temple, wasn't it that there was a point where?
Yeah, let's see when they go to attack the Jews for what they didn't keep. There's lots of proofs that they did, right? Mm-hmm. So we'll see that even if you pick on many Jews who didn't keep, there's always Jews that are keeping. Right? So you can't say the Jews are not keeping. The Jews it's a minority. Okay, even if it's a minority, but the collective whole of the Jewish people are keeping the mitzvos, right? We haven't abandoned mitzvos as a nation, right? These non-Jews, they didn't keep these mitzvos. They were just not on their radar. Mm-hmm. So itguri itgur. So therefore, right, that was their. They sort of benefited, right, from the fact that they no longer have the obligation. They can't get punished anymore for not keeping the Sheva mitzvahs b'nei Noach because they're not obligated anymore. Im kain, and if that's true, matzidu chotei niskar. So we have a principle that that there's crime doesn't pay, right? That's essentially there's a principle: crime doesn't pay. So the non-Jews seem to have gotten away with one here, right? They didn't keep the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, so Hashem said, okay, forget it, you don't have to keep them anymore. Now they murder people and they don't get punished for it. That sounds like crime paid. So how do you explain that? So Mar Brei de Ravina. So Mar, the son of Ravina, says on Daf Gimel and Aleph, Lomar, to say she'afal pi shemekaymin osan ein mekabel olim schar. It goes both ways. They don't get punished for when they do an avera, but they also don't get any reward when they keep them anymore. Right? It goes both ways. So therefore the loss is greater than the gain. Right? Velo, but they don't get any reward for keeping mitzvos. Vehatanya, we learned in a brisa. Higher Rabbi Meir would say, how do we know that, let's say, a non-Jew keeps the Torah, right? He learns Torah. He is considered like a Kohen Gadol. We honor him and respect him like a Kohen Gadol, right? If he decides he wants to lead a moral and proper life, we respect that.
How can you compare it to a Kohen Gadol? Kohen Gadol would be in a much higher madriga.
But he's not. That's the point, right? You get a non-Jew who's very respectful, very appropriate, keeps his Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, and he takes care of, right? We all have honors and monuments to Raoul Wallenberg and to righteous Gentiles, right? We have all kinds of ways that and it's appropriate to honor a righteous Gentile, right? That's this concept, the righteous Gentile. So Talmud Lomar, therefore the pasuk says, Asher Yaseh Osam Hadam V'chai Bahem, Kohanim Leviim V'Yisrael. It says that a person should do these mitzvos and he should live by them. It says a person. It doesn't say Kohanim Leviim V'Yisraelim. It's not a class system. Anybody who does them should get rewarded for it. So therefore, the Kohanim Leviim V'Yisraelim number doesn't say that you have to be a Kohen Levi Yisrael. Ella Ha'adam, any person. That teaches you shafilu ovei kochav v'osek b'Torah. If you have a non-Jew and he acts appropriately, does right things, harehu kekohen gadol. He's up there, highest levels, like a kohen gadol. Ella lomar lecha she'ein mekabel olim schar kemetzuva v'oseh. What's the difference? Now that they don't have to keep the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, they don't get as much reward. It's harder because they're not commanded, right? And when you're not commanded, so then your Yetzer Hara doesn't tell you not to do it. And so you get no benefit to overcoming your Yetzer Hara. Everything is optional, right? They're really in an optional state. If they do it, extra credits. So you get extra credit. They're considered like people who are doing mitzvahs and getting extra credit. Sure, they can reach high, lofty levels, but it's a lot more work to be able to get there because each mitzvah that you do isn't overcoming adversity to be able to accomplish, and you gain so much more by overcoming adversity than simply by accomplishing something great. As Rabbi Chanina said, somebody who overcomes adversity by being commanded to do a mitzvah and he does it is greater than somebody who does something extra credit, right? They're not required to do it. So they don't have a good claim. They said, Hashem, you never offered us the Torah, you never forced us into it. And Hashem says, because I know you weren't going to keep it, because I gave you 7 mitzvahs, you couldn't keep those. Why would I force you to keep 613? So, good answer. So this is what the non-Jews say to Hashem. Ribono shel olam. Yisrael shekiblu hechon kimua. The Jews didn't keep it either, right? This is Brian's claim. The Jews didn't keep it either. So Amar lema Kadosh Baruch Hu. So Hashem says, Ani made bahem shekaimu. I will testify the Jews kept it. Shekimu as a Torah kula. Omrim lefanov, so they say to Hashem, Ribono shel olam, klum yesh av shemamid es beno. A father can't testify for a son. Doesn't work. The pasuk says, Beni bechori Yisrael, you call the Jewish people your firstborn son. So you can't be a witness. Amar lema Kadosh Baruch Hu, so Hashem says, okay, fair point. Shemayim va'aretz ya'idu. So the heaven and the earth are going to testify bahem, about them, shekimu esek Torah kula, that they kept the whole Torah. Omrim lefanav Ribono shel olam, so the non-Jews say back, Hashem, Shemaim va'aretz nogin be'edusam. They are tampered witnesses, right? They're affected by the testimony. Why? Shenamar, because the pasuk says, "Im lo brisi yomam v'layla chuko shemaim va'aretz lo samti." If it wasn't for my covenant of day and night, right? Torah learning, we have to do day and night. V'gisam ho yomam v'layla. If it wasn't for learning day and night, so then then the physical laws of the heaven and the earth I would not have established. So therefore, if the Jews didn't collect, so it says, as Damar Shimon Lakish, Reish Lakish says, "My dichsev vahi erev vayivoker yom hashishi." Why is it that there's an extra hey when we do Yom Rishon, Yom Sheni, Yom Shishi, and then it says Yom Hashishi, that there was day and there was night, and it was the sixth day? Because we're not just referring to the sixth day of creation, we're referring to another the sixth of Sivan, which is the day that the Torah was given. Hashem made a condition with the creation. The Amar, and he said, Im Yisro mekablan es Torasi mutav. If we go through history and the Jews get to Har Sinai and they accept the Torah, wonderful, everything keeps going. V'im lav, but if they don't, ani achzir eschem l'tov havahu, then the whole creation gets destroyed. So therefore, the creation, Shemaim Haaretz, of course they're going to testify the Jews kept the Torah, because if they don't keep the Torah, they get destroyed. So therefore, they're tampered witnesses. They can't testify. Right? So my dichsiv, so what is it that the pasuk says? We changed the girsa to the girsa should be Ve'amar Chizkiah. Ve'amar Chizkiah, and Chizkiah says, "My dichsiv mishamayim hishmata din eretz yer avishakta." That from the heavens they heard the law, and the earth feared and was quiet. So the question is, im yira lama shakta. When you're afraid, you don't stay quiet, right? So why is it that the earth was fearful and then was quiet? Vim shakta, and if it was quiet, lama yir, then why was it afraid? Ella, rather, means like this. But chila yara, at first, the heavens and the earth, they were scared. They didn't know what's going to happen. Are the Jews going to keep it or are they not? Ulavasov, but in the end, shakta, they were calmed down because the Jews did accept the Torah and everything worked out. Amar lema kadosh baruch hu. So Hashem says, okay, fair enough. Mikem yavo v'yidu b'hen b'Yisrael shekimu es Torah kula. We're going to have to get some non-Jews here to testify that the Jews kept the Torah. So let's go. Let's call some witnesses. Yavo Nimrod. Let's call up Nimrod. V'ya'id ba'Avram. He's going to testify about Avraham shelo avad avodas kochavim. He refused to worship idols because Nimrod said to Avraham, right, you either worship this idol or I'm throwing you into the furnace. And Avraham said, no, thank you. And they threw him into the furnace.
Abraham had faith in Hashem, that's why he never got burnt.
That is correct. So that's the proof. Nimrod's got to testify to that. Yavo Lavan. Let's get Lavan up here on the stand. V'ya'id b'Yaakov shelo nechshad ala gezel. That Yaakov didn't steal, right? As much as Lavan tried to trick him, Yaakov made every deal and kept everything with explicit honesty. Lavan has to admit that, right? Tavo Eshes Potifera. Let's get Potiphar's wife up there. V'ta'id b'Yosef. She can testify about Yosef. Shelo nechshad al avera. That he didn't commit adultery. Right? We'll go through all of our Saras and Dibros. Yavo Nebuchadnezzar. Let's get Nebuchadnezzar up on the stand. V'yayid b'Chananya Mishael v'Azariah delo hishtachavu letzelim. They refused to bow down to an idol, and they got thrown into a furnace. Chananya, Mishael, and Azariah. So he should get up on the stand. Yavo Daryavesh. Let's call Daryavesh up to the stand. V'yayid b'Daniel shalobita l'satfila. Daryavesh made a decree that nobody was allowed to daven to anybody other than him. And Daniel didn't listen, and he davened anyway. And so he got thrown into a lion's den over the deal, right? So therefore, let's get Daryavesh up here to testify that Daniel refused to capitulate. Yavo Bildad Hashuchi v'tzofar hanamati ve'elifaz hatemani. And we're going to delete the last one, Eliyahu ben Barchiel Habuzi, and we'll explain why. These are the friends. These are the friends of Eov. Right? Eov has a terrible situation. His house collapses, his family dies, he loses everything, and his friends come to comfort him. So they're going to come. V'ya'idu b'hem b'Yisrael shekimu es kol Torah kula. They are going to testify, right? That they are going to testify that the Jews kept all of the Torah, right? So that's why they, because they were prophets, they were Nevi'im. And so therefore they're called to testify as Nevi'im. Now, Eliyahu ben Barchiel Habuzi could be called as well. He was one of the friends of Eov. But he can't be called because many Mefarshim explain he's Jewish, so therefore he can't testify for the Jews because he is one. So therefore that name gets deleted from the text, despite the fact that he's in Eov as fulfilling the role of being a prophet. Shenamar, as the pasuk says, Yitnu, bless you, Yitnu Eidehem v'yatzdiku, that they should give their testimony, and the Jews will be judged righteously. Amru lefanov, so they say before him, Ribbono shel olam. Okay, Hashem, you got us. Jews kept the Torah. We didn't keep the Torah. We were offered it. We couldn't fulfill the Shav Mitzvahs B'nei Anoch. You got it. Tna lanu mirosh v'nasin. Let's start all over. Redo. Let's redo. We got it now. Okay, we're reset. We're ready to follow the rules now. Right? Amar Hashem HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Right? Hashem says, Shotim Sheba Olam. Doesn't work like that, says Yehuda. And Hashem, right? You are the foolish people in the world. Misha Tarch Be'erev Shabbos, Yochel B'Shabbos. The rule is that if you prepare your meal on Erev Shabbos, you can eat on Shabbos. Misha Lo Tarch Be'erev Shabbos. If you didn't put any effort in on Erev Shabbos, Mehechan Yochel B'Shabbos, you wouldn't have anything to eat on Shabbos, right? This is a great message for kids, right? And for everybody, really, right? Put the work in, and you'll be ready when you need it, right? Oh, as the Boy Scouts of America say, be prepared. Ella ava pikain mitzvah kalo yeshli. He says, okay, you're right, I'm right, you're wrong. Nevertheless, let's do it. Let's pick an easy mitzvah. Sukkah, right? Right? Yeshli. V'sukkah shema. Mitzvah sukkah. Let's pick mitzvah sukkah. Lechuv asuosa. Okay? So let's go do mitzvah sukkah. Okay? That's the deal. Keep mitzvah sukkah, you're in. All or nothing. Okay? Umi matzis amar hachi. So, can you do this? How can Hashem say, okay, how is Hashem, like we said, there was the claim is that you can't prepare. So how's Hashem now? Oh, we're at Olam Haba stage, right? You can't do mitzvos now and get credit. The Ha'amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, didn't Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi says, my dichsiv, what does it mean when the pasuk says, Asher anochi mitzavecha hayom, these are the mitzvos that I'm commanding you today. Hayom la'asosim, you're supposed to do the mitzvos today. V'lo lemachar la'asosim, you don't do them la'asid lavo, right? Once it's la'asid lavo already, too late to do the mitzvos. Hayom la'asosam, v'lo hayom litoschar. Also, you're supposed to do them today, you don't get reward. Now, right? Any reward you're getting is not really the reward for the mitzvah. The reward for the mitzvah comes in Olam Haba. So you do them now, get the reward later. But that means that they shouldn't be allowed. Here we are in the Olam Haba stages, and Hashem's giving them a mitzvah to do. That's not fair. How does that work? Ella she'ena kadosh baruch hu ba betrunya imbriosov. The answer is Hashem's not playing gotcha here. Hashem's not playing it. You want to try? Let's go. I'll prove it to you. Come on, let's go. Right? Like the Meraglim, right? Hashem says, right? They wanted to spy. I got nothing to hide. Let's go. Here it is. That's how Hashem handles things. V'amai kari li mitzvah kala. Okay. Why is sukkah such an easy mitzvah? This is irony. Mishum delays bechisarn, because it doesn't cost that much to do sukkah, right? Anybody can do sukkah.
Building sukkah to the exact size.
To build a sukkah doesn't have to cost all that much, right? I guess that's the answer, right? We go to the sukkah depot and it's thousands of dollars and whatever. Prefab, correct. That's our shtick. The bottom line is that I could take I can go to the hardware store and get a couple of crates, right? And I could put up a sukkah, right? It doesn't have to be that complicated.
Well, the mitzvah isn't even building it or owning it.
It's living in it. Yeah, so I don't even have to spend anything, right? I could go to the shul sukkah, right? Theoretically, right? Doesn't have to cost that much. Miyad kol echad ve'echad notel v'holech v'osa sukkah. Everybody's ready. Okay, we're in. This is a great deal. Everybody goes home and they build a sukkah. Berosh gago, right? They build it on the top of their roof. They build a nice sukkah. V'akadosh baruch hu makdir aleim chama b'tkufas Tammuz, and the sun comes out. And it's blazing hot. I know it's difficult to imagine in Toronto. I remember learning this Gemara for the first time. One of my rabbis in when I was in middle school taught it.
Tomorrow it would be more complicated.
It was New York, and I could not imagine it being hot on Sukkot. Yeah. But if you're in Eretz Yisrael, we lived in Florida. It is terrible, right? And it can be very, very, very hot. Okay, very hot.
Are you allowed to put AC in your
I had an air conditioner. I put an air conditioner in my sukkah. Right? We have heaters. I put an air conditioner. It did not help. Because, but I could have done better. If I had a really good air conditioner, and if it was, you need a really good one because if it's blowing cold air right on you, right? Then the answer is yeah. But if you go from region to region, sukkahs are built differently in regions. If you go to Florida, sukkahs are all built out of like that mechitza material, that lattice that you have there on the mechitza. That's how they build all the walls of their sukkah. There's all just airy, open. You want wind. You want air to flow. You do not want. I had my Chicago box. wooden box, and it was like yes, it was a hot box. It was not pleasant, but yeah. So I cut a hole in it, and I put an air conditioner in the window, and it was not a strong enough air conditioner. I had a good strong air conditioner, could have worked, but okay. So all the non-Jews, they're all angry. They go out, they kick their sukkah. V'yotze, and they leave. Shenamar, as Pasuk says, Nanteka es mos rosemo v'nashlicha mimenu avosenu makdir. So the Pasuk says that right, they're going to rebel. Pasuk says I don't know what that translation. Ninatka, which is ninatka is mos rosemo. What's the translation?
Let us cut their cords.
Cut their cords, right? They're going to cut their cords, and they are going to release their strings, right?
Yeah,
cast off their ropes.
Yeah.
Okay, so
and then makdir is part of the next.
Right. So makdir. So now makdir. Why did Hashem let the sun come out? Right. So the Amart ina Kodesh Baruch Hu ba betrunya in Briosav. You said Hashem isn't going to play the games here, the gotcha, right? And here's what Hashem did. He played gotcha. That's exactly what he did, right? He told them that they were going to do mitzvah sukkah, and then he smoked them out. So the answer is Mishum de Yisrael nami zimnin de mashkalu tkufas tamus ad chaga. The answer is because the Jewish people also sometimes it's hot.
Yeah.
So that's okay. It's hot. So Gimel and base. V'havi luhu tzara, and it's hard to be in the sukkah. Right? It happens. V'amar Rava, but Rava said mitzvah potter min a sukkah. Okay, but if it's really that hot, so then they'd be exempt from the sukkah. They don't have to stay out in the sukkah if it's that hot.
For the one mitzvah.
Right? So for the so nihida pater biuti mimi baiti. He says, okay, I get it that they were exempt, but did they have to kick the sukkah on the way out? That's the issue. Right? When we can't do the mitzvah, everybody's waiting and they're outside. Can we go in? No, we can't. We're disappointed. We built the sukkah. We couldn't sit in it. We're all disappointed. They're like, what is wrong with Hashem? He gives us a mitzvah, then he makes it hard for us, and they kick it on the way out. That's the problem. That's one of
the tests Hashem gave us.
That's the test, right? They don't get the philosophy, the mindset. It's not the mitzvah of sukkah itself that Hashem's testing in. He's testing their mindset. You don't understand, you don't get it. You have to want to do it. Miyada Kadosh Baruch Hu Yoshev Mesachik Alehem. That's where Hashem finally starts laughing at them, right? Shenemar's pasuk says, Yoshev B'Shemayim Yitzchak. Hashem sits in the heaven and he laughs. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak. Rabbi Yitzchak says, Ein tzchok lifnei Kadosh Baruch Hu Ela Osa Hayom Bavad. Hashem only laughs at that day. Hashem never laughs. Why? Right? Because laughing indicates that something unexpected happened. Right? You tried something, and then Hashem's expecting everything. Can't pull a fast one on Hashem. So there's a, right. But this is the plot twist, right? Here it is. Hashem set this plot twist up in order to prove the point. That's where Hashem says, ha! The plot twist at the end that proves the whole point in everything in creation. I'm right. The Jewish people kept the Torah. The non-Jewish people did not.
And the joke's on you.
And the joke's on you. Therefore, Hashem, that's the day of laughter for Hashem. Iked demasni lahod Rabbi Yitzchak aha. Now, sometimes there were those who said that Rabbi Yitzchak's point about Hashem laughing was about this case. The Tanya, we learn in a brisa. Rabbi Yossi says, in the future days, the non-Jews are going to come and they're going to convert. How can you accept converts? It's the end of days. It's too late. Right? At that point, everybody wants to convert when the Jews are winning. Right?
If you convert, isn't that like you're reborn again if you become Jewish?
Yes, it is, but you can't convert them if the reason they're converting is because you're winning, right? You have to convert when it doesn't look so clear that we're going to win. Ve'hatanya, we learned in a brisa, ein mekabel gerim limosa Mashiach. You can't, once Mashiach comes, can't have any more converts. It's too late. Now we're winning. Kayotzi bo, similarly, lo kiblu gerim lo bimei David, v'lo bimei Shlomo. They didn't accept any converts during David Melech's time or Shlomo Melech's time because the Jews were winning then. So therefore, it was not a good thing to be able to accept converts. El shenasu gerim gerurim umanichin tefillin beroshehem, tefillin bezarosehem, tzitzis bebigdehem, mezuzah bepeschehem. Rather, what happened is these were like converts who were dragged along. They desperately wanted to convert. They weren't allowed to, but they followed along and they picked a mitzvah and they decided we're going to keep the mitzvah. So they put on tefillin. And they wore their tzitzis, right? And they put a mezuzah on their door. Okay, so that's what they're ready. Okay, we're so into this. Okay, Kevan Sharon Milchamas Gog uMagog. Okay, then comes the great war of Gog uMagog. Okay, so they're all in on this so far. Amar lehen Amar basem. So Amrulo al Hashem va'al mishicho. So they ask, well, why are you guys here? What's the big deal? What's the war about? And they're like, because Hashem is coming and the war is coming. Shenemar lama rikshu goyim uloimim yehagu reik. V'kol echad minatik mitzvah so v'holich. So everybody hear this and everybody takes their mitzvah off and they go run. Whoops, never mind, right? Change my mind. Shenamar nenadkaz mosro sema. They take off their ropes and their strings, right? They take off the tefillin and the tzitzis, and that's it. V'akadosh baruch hu yoshev u'mesachik, and that's where Hashem laughs, indicating, see, I'm right. Shenamar yoshev b'shamayim yischak. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak ein la'akadosh baruch hu skok elo osayom belvad. The only day that Hashem laughs is that day. Okay, so we'll stop here. We're going to talk about other days that Hashem laughs, potentially.